Thanks for staying with us. So we're minding our business, Jejeli, when we saw in the papers that 89 men were beaten up by their wives in the last 15 months. And we're wondering, how? You will not believe it was actually the Lagos State Commissioner for Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation that said it with her own mouth. So we said, okay, let us bring her to the show and let's come and explain, because we didn't want to really talk about it. How is this possible in this Lagos? So join us as we welcome Mrs. Cecelia Dada. Welcome to the show, madam.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you.
So this revelation, I mean, many find it startling, you know, but also real, because the truth is that we know it happens, but people don't talk about it. So as the Commissioner for Women Affairs, obviously so many data comes to you, so much data comes to you. Could you give us understanding where these figures came about, how it came about, and how do you help these kind of people to find solution?
Thank you very much, Maria. Well, indeed, 89 men came to the ministry to complain about domestic violence. It wasn't all of them that were beaten by their wives.
Okay.
We had about 6 cases of men that were beaten by their wives, but most of the reports were that the men wanted custody of their children. Maybe their wives ran away with the children, and they have, well, they say emotional violence, which is part of domestic violence. So they want us to look for the wives. They want us to invite the wives to bring back their children. So that's what actually happened. But having said that, I must say here, why is it news that 89 men were beaten by their wives? Why is it not news that 664 women were beaten by their husbands?
The difference is, you know, for men, we don't hear them come out. I think it's a thing of shame, and the fact that the society would, you know, stigmatize you when you come out and say your wife beats you up. So they swallow in silence, and then we just hear, it's the women's voices that are loudest. So we always assume, once you hear domestic violence, the assumption is that it's the man that is beating the woman. Now, I wanted to ask you, what encouraged those men to come out and speak to the ministry?
You see, our culture is part of the problems we have. And the stereotypes that men must be macho. Who says a boy cannot cry? Who says men cannot cry? And that's the problem we have. A lot of parents focus on the girl child. A lot of people focus on the women. But men too feel pains. So it is possible for them to also be violated. And I must let you know today that it's time for us to focus on the boy child. The ministry had a program, we've had a series of programs for men and boys, because we realized that most parents focus on the girl child. They look at the areas of not being violated. Meanwhile, boys too are violated by caregivers and what have you.
So, you know, I was looking at that number 89, and for me, I'm sure this is just the tip of the iceberg. Because even for the number for women, we know that that's just a little of, for those who feel confident or who have been pushed to the point that they need to, you know, speak out. So what I would like for you to help us explain today would be what the signs are for you to recognize that a man is in this vulnerable situation, because mostly men would not speak up. How do you become your brother's keeper in a situation where you're able to speak up for him or help him go and get help? What are the signs you should look out for?
Like I said earlier on, men find it difficult to speak out. And when they come to report, it's at the verge of breakup. They come to say, please, take this woman out of my house. This woman, I cannot cope with her anymore. And for them to come out, it must have gotten to a level that they cannot take it anymore. When you see men that go to work and do not always want to go back home, or when you see men that just decide to sit in beer parlors and viewing centers, when you see men that are not comfortable being around their wives, you know that they have issues. Problem. And you see, during the pandemic, during the lockdown, the reports spiked because people were locked up together and they had no choice.
So if you see a colleague in the office that is just always ready to stay here till 9 p.m., just, you know, you want, maybe there's something, maybe it's time for the human resources of those companies to have a conversation. Is there any reason why you just like staying at work so late? That could be an indication to seek, because they're, just like Mariam said, they don't like asking for help. Yeah. But let me come to Tope here.
Yeah, so I want to talk about the emotional abuse, because we don't touch on it enough. And people don't acknowledge the trauma that men feel when their children are taken away. We talk a lot about women. How can you take a woman's child away from her? How can you leave her alone? She's labored for these children. Why don't we acknowledge? We don't do enough to acknowledge the attachment a man has to the children. Based on your experience, your interaction with the reports on these men, what would you say? How would you rate the attachment men have to their children, and how they feel at the loss of their children being taken away from them by their wives?
It might interest you to know that a lot of men love their children more than the women. But men find it difficult to express themselves because they want to be strict, they want to be macho. They don't express the kind of love that the mothers expressed. So when you take those children away from them, it affects them emotionally. It affects them emotionally.
Just to add to what Tope said, because I'd like you to build more on that, how does the ministry help a man get back his children in that kind? Because usually you think it's something that goes for the courts. So do you act like an intermediary between the courts and them, or do you provide them lawyers, or do you just call a meeting with all the parties and try to resolve? What kind of service does the ministry provide for men in that situation where that want custody of their children?
Okay. Usually when they come, we try to find out where the women are with the children. We bring them into the ministry. We try to mediate. But as situations where we see that they need legal intervention, we refer them to the Ministry of Justice.
Okay. Is there any plans for sensitization and creating awareness so that a lot of men understand that it's okay to come and report if you're in this sort of situation?
Yes, we do a lot of sensitization programs for men and for boys. We let them know, like I said earlier on, yes, they have the right to feel pain. They can cry if they need to cry. They can express their pains if they have to. They don't have to be mature all the time. So we have a lot of sensitization and advocacy programs. How do
we get, because I'm not aware, and I'm sure a lot of people are not aware, how do we know about these programs?
Well, we have billboards, banners all around Lagos to let people know that when they are involved in any kind of violence, be it emotional, domestic, sexual, that they can come to the ministry. And there are phone numbers that they can easily call.
Can I just ask, in your sensitization, who are the stakeholders that you involve in having these conversations with these men? Because men... Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Because men don't listen to just everybody. You know, women, anybody that is talking, hey, see also, see my problem, help me. So a man needs to, it always seems like a man needs to find someone he can truly trust and someone that they look up to. Not just anyone would be enough for a man to sit down and listen to you.
You know, for them to come to the ministry, they had the choice to go to their religious leaders. They had the choice to go to their community leaders, but they chose to come to the government because they must have thought that it is the government that will be able to resolve their issues for them. And there is the Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team in Lagos State, which is the combination of all the MDAs involved in things like this.
So you did that, is the
DSVRT.
They're really active on Twitter there, and they're also very responsive. But one of the things that I find very interesting is the fact that Lagos is one of the safest places for women to be in, because we have laws and they are enforced. But if you go down to the rural areas, if you go to the lungus, the ghettos, you don't see them take advantage of the laws that protect them. It's in those places that a drunk husband comes on and slaps his wife, or an angry wife brings out the knife, and they don't even understand how to trace their way to the laws. what's the advocacy towards the lower income areas to engage them into taking advantage of the laws that exist already in Lagos?
Yes. Our ministry is not just for it's not just for women in the urban areas. We actually go to the rural areas to sensitize them, to let them know their rights, to let them know that there's a government who is responsive, to let them know that there's a government who is ready to protect them. We don't just sensitize them, we also try to empower them, because we realize that women who are not empowered are the ones who get stuck in abusive marriages. So we have programs for women in the rural areas.
The truth is that you can't do it alone. You need partners with private sector. So are you talking to the private sectors, NGOs, to partner with you? Because so at least you can reach as many regions as possible.
Yes. We're in partnership with UNFPA, UN Women, and some NGOs in Nigeria.
Right.
Okay, how about celebrities? Okay. Because we know the power of celebrities and the influence they have. Their social media following ranges in millions and even hundreds of thousands. So who are the people that you're already working with in the media space to help propagate this message on a consistent basis?
Okay. Recently, we had a program called the E for She. And during that program, Patoranking was one of the champions. You know, he sang that song, My Woman. So he was one of the people that was decorated as
May I ask, because I know that before a man comes to the government to report such a case, it's already here, and he probably wants out. How do you encourage them to come in early? That's one. Two, how do you solve the issues of emotional abuse, not physical now? Do you work with, do you run like a counseling session? Do you work with therapists? How do you solve that particular issue?
The truth is that when the men come, they just want to get it over with. All they want is to get their children or to dissolve the marriage. So when you tell them to come in for
counseling,
psychosocial counseling, they will hardly respond. But a lot of women are being counseled. Women would rather want to be counseled. They will want to keep their marriages. But when a man comes out to say it is over, it's difficult for you to get them down to counsel them.
All right, let me go on a quick break. When we come back, move on to other segments of women affairs within Lagos State. Stay with us, we'll be right back.